International commerce has made headlines quite a bit in 2025 and already in 2026, and has been an ever changing environment for businesses who not only sell worldwide, but also get products and materials from around the world. At ShipStation, we're always here to help demystify e commerce for our customers. And today, I'm joined by James Marley, VP of Cross Border at Swap Commerce and consultant to businesses adopting cross border e commerce strategies. Today, we'll break down international commerce and shipping, help explain a bit more about the current landscape, and help you have more confidence in taking a global approach to your business and shipping. James, thanks for joining me today. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hello, Rob. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, my name is James Marley. I'm based in the UK. I'm, as you mentioned, VP of Cross Border at Swap Commerce, which is a very successful tech startup based in the UK. I actually started my career in Los Angeles, where I co-founded a textile technology startup. And then I ran an e-commerce business in the in the United States for several years. Since then, I moved to DHL Express in the UK and helped them focus on their move from B2B to e-commerce in the early days. I've also developed a global commerce consultancy and worked with another global tech startup before moving to Swap Commerce a couple of years ago.
Wow. As you can see, James brings a wealth of experience in international logistics, and I'm excited to see what he has to share with us today. So let's get started. Okay. Most merchants believe that they have a good grasp of their sales performance, but you argue, James, that they are often missing a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to global growth. So, to kick things off, can you walk us through the framework you use to help brands measure the true potential of international business?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. So I can't tell you the number of brands I go to who are looking at the growth of their businesses and only looking at some very simple metrics. What I always propose is taking more of a holistic approach of looking at the overall performance of the sites. So what do I mean by that? Businesses will often measure conversion rate, for example. Now, what I'm saying is don't just measure conversion rate. Let's not just look at conversion rate. Let's look at the domestic performance of your business against the international performance of your business. And then let's break down conversion rate into its component pieces, by which I mean bounce rate, add to basket, basket to order, order to checkout, and lifetime value. So if you do this and you break it down for domestic versus international, and then you break it down for even down to your key markets, what it does is it paints a very vivid picture of where the actual opportunities lie. So why am I saying this? Because I can't tell you the number of brands I've gone into who have talked to me about changing the color of the buy now button from green to blue or something because they think it's going to improve conversion. Or, I worked with a brand a while ago who were, having that exact discussion. So what I did is I took their data, I measured their domestic performance, which I used as a benchmark across those metrics I just mentioned. Again, bounce rate, add to basket, basket to order, order to checkout, and lifetime value. So I used the domestic as a benchmark, and then I broke down their international lanes into those metrics that I just mentioned. And for example, they said, we're not performing very well in China. And I could see that in order to access their website from China, you needed to select the school buses or the fire hydrants to get onto their website. And so by fixing that, all of a sudden it enabled more business to come on to their website at the top end of the sales funnel, as opposed to putting all of their focus onto the end of the funnel. So always understand the changes you make at the top of the funnel have far more repercussions and far greater value than at the end of the funnel. Another opportunity I had was struggling with US performance. So again, we broke down the US traffic on their site into those metrics. And we saw that consumers were struggling on the product page. And it turned out to be something very simple, which is they were a UK brand selling UK footwear sizes to US consumers, where different footwear sizes, where consumers didn't understand UK footwear sizing. So little changes like that and breaking it down into its component pieces allow you to work out where to spend the effort to see the biggest impact. And one last point on this is that if you use your domestic performance as a benchmark, it actually allows you to see the potential of your international performance on your website as well, because now you can say, right, if I had the same traffic coming onto my international coming onto my site internationally, and it was transacting through the website as well as my domestic business, then this is exactly how much additional revenue I could be generating. And so it's a good way of understanding what the opportunity is and where the opportunities are within your sales funnel across your target markets for improving your website.
Wow, that's great, James. And hopefully gives merchants a better lens and a different way to look at the opportunity that exists in adopting a more global approach to their e-commerce businesses. Now, the world of e-commerce is always changing, as we know, but right now we're seeing some seismic shifts in global trade from the end of the de minimis era to new compliance rules. So, for merchants who have been focused exclusively on their domestic growth, what is de minimis and what does this new kind of post de minimis era mean for them in more practical terms?
Yeah, de minimis. It doesn't make it easy to use a Latin tag. De minimis non curat lex, it stands for, which means too small to be of significance. And that's effectively saying that any goods under the value under a specific value coming into a market are effectively too expensive for the authorities to try and collect duties and taxes on. It costs them more than the money they'd actually receive by getting those duties and taxes. So, what the US has effectively done is they have removed a de minimis value, which means that all goods coming into the United States, regardless of the return and revenue, we now need to collect duties and taxes on those shipments. So, what does a post de minimis era mean? Well, three very simple things. It means you can't just ship it and hope that it will get there, which is, let's face it, what 95% of all e-commerce merchants have done in the past. And international consumers come in, stick a label on it, and I hope to goodness it's going to get there and that consumer's going to be happy. There are more responsibilities for merchants now. It means, as I mentioned, duties are now owed on all shipments coming into the United States. In practical terms, what it means is that before, if a shipment was coming into the United States, you could use one line of data to clear that at customs. Now you need over 30 lines of data to clear the same shipment. So that's resulting in increased customs delays. It's resulting in increased requirements on merchants to provide the right data at source. It's meaning that brands need to go out and work out, who the manufacturer of the goods is to generate what's called an MID code, a manufacturer's identification code, to inform Customs and Border Patrol who made these goods. If you're shipping B2B to C, if you're shipping B2C, actually, and this might be quite useful to a lot of your viewers, you don't need to provide a MID code for every single product you're sending. You can, in fact, be the MID code yourself and use your own address as part of that MID code. And it means in the post de minimis era, country of origin, supply chains, all these things are developing and evolving. And we're seeing a massive reciprocal change as well. So in the past few years since COVID and since many of the geopolitical events, we've had VAT on e-commerce in Norway. The European Union's introduced the import one-stop shop. We've got one-stop shop for European VAT. We've got Stop Act. We've got GPSR. We've got take your pick. There are hundreds of these new regulations coming out. And if a brand wants to go global now, they have far more responsibilities to understand what data is required and how best to present that data to the authorities. But also they need to consider, is international really the right path for me? Because, if you're selling toothpaste where your margins are very small, then to ship internationally, the costs are considerably more. So it's a good time for brands to consider, what are my target markets? What are my costs going to be in those markets? And how can we best approach consumers in those markets? And this is where the ShipStation and Swap partnership really comes in, because what we've created, which is a really awesome solution, is a guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes solution, which is outstanding. And what it does is it allows predictable tax outcomes, compliant flows and full visibility for merchants on those cross-border transactions. It means merchants can now collect the money for duties and taxes in the checkout from the consumer. And then when they receive a duty and tax invoice a week later or a month later, whatever it's going to be, it's going to reconcile with the amount that they've collected in the checkout. Now, what I've just said is appallingly boring. It's incredibly dull and not very interesting. However, it's actually a really big thing because if you think about before, what was happening was, a brand would ship internationally. They didn't collect the duties and taxes. And then maybe a week, maybe 30 days later, they're receiving an invoice from the carriers that they had no idea what that's going to be. And so that is now coming out of their margin on that international order. And international orders are generally the most profitable because international consumers spend more and return less. So if you get your offer architecture right, particularly with this guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes solution, it means that you can better transact with those international consumers who are better consumers overall.
Yeah, I gotta say, we do love our acronyms in shipping, don't we? But it's really great to kind of break down how you can find some peace of mind and selling to, an international audience. So thank you for breaking down some of kind of what these terms mean and really how merchants should be thinking about them when it comes to their business. When it comes to international shipping, it's easy to get fixated on the cost per pound, but you argue that chasing the cheapest rate is kind of a dead end. So, what do you see brands doing wrong when they build their shipping strategy, and how should they be thinking about kind of the true cost of international shipping?
Yeah, this is something that those that know me know I like to rant about a lot, and it's because logistics operators they like to make things very complicated, and for many years the approach has been this is too complicated, let us take care of everything, and so it's created these, and if you look at carrier rate cards these days, it's complicated to understand. I struggle understanding rate cards often, but what it means is that many merchants have this very two-dimensional approach when it comes to understanding shipping rates, where they look at a half kilo or a £1 price to send a shipment from the UK to the United States, or from the US to the UK, depending wherever it's going. Um, when in reality, that isn't a very good measure of their overall cost because you have different carriers who might be measuring on volumetric or actual weight or dead weight. You have additional surcharges like fuel surcharges, residential surcharges, emergency situation surcharges. There are all these different costs involved in shipping. And so I always say to brands to try and focus on the cost rather than just having that two-dimensional approach to looking at a single rate card. And ultimately, I would always advise brands to consider the the right carrier for the products that they're selling. So I mentioned earlier, selling toothpaste. Well, if you're selling a tube of toothpaste internationally, using a carrier like DHL Express for overnight delivery isn't going to be the best solution. Equally, if you're selling a wedding dress, I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting it on the postal network, where it might take 12 to 14 days to get there, and there's a higher chance of goods getting lost. So, if you work on very rough averages and consider your carrier profile, if you have a high average order value, go for an express operator. There are more tracking incidents. There are more, having that closed network where the person collecting your shipment from your warehouse is going to be wearing the same uniform as the person who delivers it anywhere in the world, and it's traveling on carrier aircraft, all owned in the same network, is a great way of doing it because they're built for that kind of product. But also take into consideration, if you're working with an express operator, you really want to expect 92% of your shipments are going to be delivered first time on time with no issues whatsoever. The other rate might be affected by weather, or they might be affected because you didn't put the right customs description or information on, which means it's experienced a document. I use a wonderful phrase called document. Oh, I can't even remember it. A document delay as opposed to customs delay, because there's no such thing as a customs delay. There's only ever bad paperwork. But if you're using a postal operator versus an express operator, then you're not going to get 92%. on-time delivery, it might be closer to 7%, sorry, 70% or 80%. And you've got to consider that, you're going to see some shipments are going to be lost in that postal network versus an express operator where it very rarely happens. So it really is about finding the right carrier for the product that you're selling. And this neatly sets up why guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes really matter, because they remove uncertainty, they protect margin, and they stop that death by a thousand cuts problems that brands face when they're choosing very cheap rates.
Yeah, I mean, customer expectations and making sure you have reliability definitely seem paramount, particularly in shipping, but in particular when you're thinking about shipping cross border, with all these other considerations you have to take into account. So we've talked about the uncertainty and risks of the new global landscape. And this actually brings us to the solution we've alluded to a couple of times, that ShipStation just launched. So let's talk a little bit about how ShipStation's guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes feature directly addresses some of the challenges and gives merchants that confidence to finally expand globally without fearing surprise fees or compliance chaos, or as you refer to the document issue.
Document driven delays. That's what I
There we
call it.
go.
DDDs. Thank
DDD.
you. Yeah, we don't do customs delays, only document driven delays. That was the name of it. So to answer your question, let's start by understanding what the situation is today. So I'm an e-commerce merchant. I'm based in the United States, and I want to send a shipment to I don't know, let's say the United Kingdom. Okay, so what I do is I'm generating the documentation online. So the consumers come onto my website, they found the product that they like, and they've clicked buy now. And that shipment is now ready to go out to the consumer. So the warehouse is going to type in the address in the United Kingdom, and they're going to be asked a couple of questions to do with a description of the goods and an HS code, for example, and what else? HS code, customs description, and they might be asked for they will be asked for the value of the goods as well that they're exporting. And so that shipment is then going to be dispatched by the warehouse, and it might take a couple of days to arrive in the United Kingdom to the consumer. Now, right now, what's probably happening, if it's an order over £135 coming into the UK, is that you have a consumer who's incredibly excited to receive this product that they've just ordered online. And then you get a hairy van driver standing on the doorstep saying, here's the product that you're so excited about. Now you owe me the duties and taxes for this product. And that consumer now has a bunch of additional costs they have to pay. Or what can also happen is they've got a text message ahead of time saying, we've got your shipment. You need to pay this before we will deliver this shipment, which, let's face it, 90% of us are going to think is a scam. And so we're probably not going to pay it. And the shipment
We've
then
all
gets
got those text
returned to
messages these
sender.
days.
Yeah, exactly. The shipment gets returned to sender in the United States, and then you have to pay for it to have passed customs and duties and taxes in the UK because the carrier's already paid that on your behalf and they want to collect the money. And then you have to pay for it to be re-imported to the United States as well, which is obviously a huge cost. The other option is you've sent it delivered, duties paid, where you're having the duties and taxes billed back to yourself. But the issue there you have is that you sent it DDP, the duties and taxes are being billed back to you. You don't really know what those duties and taxes are going to be. And now you have this uncertain cost that is coming at some point in the future against this really profitable consumer base that you're trying to attract more of, so you can expand into a new market. And never forget, those brands that focus on expanding into new markets reduce their risk because they have risk spread across multiple markets. So if they're not doing well in the US, they can rely on those international orders to expand in certain times of uncertainty. So we've discussed shipping DAP, which is putting a bad experience on the consumer. We've discussed DDP, which is giving uncertainty around the cost to the merchant. Now we're talking about what we're going to do with this ShipStation's guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes. So now what happens is the consumer goes through their regular shopping experience, and when they get to the checkout, they find their product, and they are presented with the option to pay those duties and taxes in the transaction. So they know there's no more cost coming down the road when the goods are going to be delivered into the to them, and the merchant knows that they've collected the right amount of money in the transaction. So those shipments are going to be sent out, and duties and taxes are going to be billed back to ShipStation, and then ShipStation is going to pass on the invoice of what they said it was going to cost in the transaction, which is outstanding because now you've collected the right money and you've got an invoice in a timely manner that matches the amount of money that you have already collected. But the other wonderful thing about this is that we're also doing ensuring that the right HTS codes are used for that landed cost calculation. So the description of the goods that you're providing allows us to provide an HS code for those goods. And the HS codes are the making of a landed cost calculation, which means that we can more accurately assess how much is actually going to be collected by customs when the goods arrive in country.
Yeah, and then that really offers the an international shipper the peace of mind of not being surprised by, a higher cost later because that guaranteed cost that they pay, they know that it's not going to be more than that, which is really great for a merchant who is offering delivered duties paid or DDP services to their customers. All right, so to bring it all together, if a merchant listening today wants to build a resilient, predictable, and ultimately successful international operation, what is the single most important shift they need to make in their mindset, and what should they do? What's the first step they should take tomorrow?
Um, the first step I think they should take is to understand that they are responsible for the data that they are generating. And so to have a good look at their product catalogs and see how they can add additional information to do with where the products come from, what the product composition is, what gender it is, what it's going to be used for, all of those elements that are used to classify the products to ensure a more accurate landed cost. I'd say, and sorry, I'm not going to give you a single most important thing. I'm going to give you a couple. I'd
We're always all
say
about more.
shipping is not just about rates. Look at your overall cost and make sure you're using the right carrier for the profile that the profile of your products. I'd say international consumers are incredibly valuable, and where you think your competitor is down the road that sells a similar product to you, in reality, your international consumer might have a different competitor that they are comparing you against. So do in-market research and work out what you're competing with and what the offer architecture of that competitive product is. I'd say guaranteed prepaid duties and taxes is by far the best way to ship internationally because it removes risk for both the consumer and the merchant. I'd say international shipping really isn't as big and scary as people think it is. And through ShipStation, merchants have the resources they need to go global properly. We'll end with the simple kind of summary. Global e-commerce is not about chasing lower shipping rates all the time. It's about building a resilient, compliant, predictable cross-border operation that serves you and your consumers.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this has been some great information, James. I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your wealth of international wisdom today. And for you watching, we hope that you found some takeaways and maybe a little more peace of mind when it comes to adopting a global mindset and strategy for your business. You can learn more and start a free trial of ShipStation at shipstation.com/global-e-commerce.